Welcome to my channel. This is a chess video on the Kingside attack. This is an old game played in 1907. The main object of all opening strategy is to get the pieces out quickly of the back rank and into active way. You can't attack alone lot alone and try to checkmate with one or two pieces. You must develop all of them as each one has a job to do. A good way to begin is to release two pieces at one stroke, and this can be done by advancing one of the center pawn. This first move e4. This is an excellent opening move. White acquires a pawn in center of the board and comes line for his queen and opens line for his queen and bishop. His next move, if he is allowed, will be d4. The two pawn will then control four squares on fifth rank: c5, d5, e5, f5, and prevent black from playing any of his pieces on these important squares. How shall how shall black reply to white's first move? He must not waste time considering meaningless mistakes such as one h6 or one a6. These and other aimless moves do nothing towards developing pieces, not do they interfere with white's threat to monopolize the center. Black must fight for the equal share of good squares. Black must dispute position of the center. Why all this stress on center? Why is it so important? Pieces placed in the center enjoys the greatest freedom of action and have the widest scope for their attacking power. A knight, for example, posted in the center teaches reaches out in eight directions and attack eight squares. Standing at the side of the board, its range of attack limited to four squares. It's only half the knight. Occupation of the center means control of the most valuable territory. It means less room for the enemy pieces and make defense difficult as his pieces learn to get in each other's way. Occupation of the center, control of it from a distance set up by barrier that divides the opponent's forces and prevent them from cooperating harmonically. Resistance by an army that it disunite, disunited is not usually not very effective. E5 is its black's move. Very good. Black insists on a five share, fixed share of a center. He fixes a pawn firmly and liberates two of his pieces. Second move from white. N F3. Absolutely the best move on the board. The knight developed with threat attack on a pawn. This could this good time as a black is not free to develop as he please. He must save the pawn before he does anything else, and this cuts down his choice for reply. The knight develops toward the center, which increases the scope of his attack. The knight even pressure on the two of the strategically important squares in the center, e5 and d5, d4. The knight comes into play early in the game in compliance with the perception developed knight before bishop. One reason for the cogency of this principle is that the knight takes shelter knight takes shorter stages than the bishop. It takes longer for him to take to the fighting area. The bishop can sweep the length of the chessboard in the one move. Notice how the f1 bishop can reach all the way to a6, while the knight takes a hip, skip and jump to get to b5. The bishop make it in a one leap. Another purpose of developing the knight first is that we are fairly sure where they belong to in the opening. We know that they are most effective on certain squares. We are not always certain about the right spots for the bishops. We may want the bishops to command the long diagonal, or we may prefer to have it pin on every enemy piece. So bring out your knight before developing bishops. At this point, you will note that black must defend his e-pawn before going about his business. There are several ways to protect the pawn. He must evaluate and chase from the possibilities. F6, Q, Queen F6, Queen E7, Bishop D6, D6 and King C6. How does the black decide on the right move? Must he analyze countless combinations and try to visualize every sort of attack and defense for next 10 or 15 moves? Let me hassle to assure you that a master does not waste valuable time of futile speculations. Instead, he makes use of potent secrets, weapons, positions, judgments. Applying it enables him to eliminate from consideration inferior moves to which the average player devotes much thoughts. He hardly glances at moves that are obviously violation of a principle. Here is what might go through his mind as he selects the right move. Second move of black, f6. Here, knight c6. Eureka! This must be best as I have developed a piece to its most suitable square and protected the e pawn at the same time. Without going into tedious analysis, black picks the best possible move. He follows the advice of the Frenchman who said, shorter, less pieces. He brings a piece out of save the e pawn without any loss of time. I would caution you that this and other maximum are not to be blindly followed. In chess, as in life, rules must often be swept aside. In general, though, the principle governing sound chess play do make wonderful guides, post especially in the opening, the middle game, and the end game. Third move from white, b6, bc4. Okay, this is the best attacking piece is the king's bishop, says stars. So white puts the pieces to work and clears the way for early castle. The bishop says to vulnerable diamond in the center and attacks black f7 pawn. The pawn is chiefly vulnerable as it is guided by one piece only, and the language is not unusual. Even early in the game, to sacrifice a piece for this pawn so that the king, in capturing it, is uprooted, driven into the open, and exposed into violent attack. Third move from black, bc5. Is this the most suitable square for the bishop? Let's look at the alterations. Bishop b4 inferior because black bishop takes no part in the struggling for control of the center and has a little scope here. Bishop d6 poor since pawn is blocked and the other bishop may have trouble controlling out. Bishop e7 not too bad because bishop looks out on two diagonals and is well placed for defense at e7. Bishop has made only one step forward, but it has developed once. It has left the back rank. The important thing to remember is that every piece must be put into the motion. The strongest developing move is 3 bishop c5 on this excellent square. The bishop commands an important diagonal, extend the pressure, and centralize attack a weak pawn. This deployment clarifies two golden rules for opening. Place each piece as quickly as possible on the squares where it is most effective. Move, move each piece only once in the opening. Fourth move c3 for white. White primary object is to establish two pawns in the center, and with this move he intends to support an advance of d pawn after 5 d4 attacking bishop, and pawn blocks must reply 5 e into d4. The recapture by 6 c into d4 leaves white two pawns in center, in control of center. His secondary aim is to bring the queen to b3, intensifying the pressure on f7 pawn. These are its virtue, but there are drawbacks of c3. In the opening pieces, not pawns should be moved. In advancing to c3, the pawns occupies a square that should be reserved for the knight. B1 knight. Black's move queen E7. Very good. Black develops a piece while pairing the thread. If white persists in playing 5d4, the continuation 5 e into d4, c into d4, queen into e4, attack, check with a pawn. The capture with check gives white no time to recover pawn, the pawn, and the extra pawn, everything else. Being equal is enough to win the game. Fifth move of white is white postpone the advance of the d pawn and moves his king to a safer place. Castle early in the game, preferably on the king side. Fifth move of black is d6. Straightness the center and support the e pawn and bishop. And now the c8 bishop can get into the game. Sixth, white move d4. With the hope that black will exchange pawns, this should leave white with an impressive line up in the center, while the c3 square is then available for his knight. If now sixth move e into d4, seventh e into d4, queen into e4, white punishes the pawn, initiating by 8 rook e, pinning the queen. So sixth move of a black is bishop b6. But black need not capture now. That is, e pawn is secured. The bishop simply retreats, still bearing down on the white center from its new position. Despite its formidable appearance, white's pawn center is shaking. The d pawn is attacked 3 times, and white must keep a triple guard on it while trying to complete his development. On 7, queen b3, which he contemplated earlier, the queen's protection is removed, while on 7, knight b d2, it is cut off. Meanwhile, white is forced with the threat of 7, bishop g4, pinned and thereby rendering useless one of the pawn's supports. Before committing to a definite center of action, white sets a little trap. 7 a4. A tricky but a logical one. White threaten attack on the bishop by 8 qs. In that 8 bishop into q5, knight d strike at the knight, protecting the bishop. After the reply 9, knight d8, white captures by 10, rook a5, winning a piece. Should black offer a5, play knight into a5, the continuation of a 9, rook as, rook into a5, bishop into a5, 10th move, queen into a4, nets the white two pieces for rook. But what right he has white to play combination when his development is so backward? An attack such as he initiated here is permitted and should not succeed. Develop all your pieces before starting any combination. The black's seventh move is a6. Black prepares to retreat for his bishop. This does not violate the perceived about making unnecessary pawn moves. In the opening, development is not meant to be automatic or routine. Threats must always be countered first. If more justification is needed, consider that black's loss of time is compensated for by white's fruitless 7 a4 move. Eighth move for white a5. There is just one chance that black will be tempted to take the pawn. Black's move at bishop a7. But black does not bite. Ninth move for white h3. A coffee house move, weak player makes this move instinctively in dive dread of having a piece pinned. It is better to submit the pin a temporary inconvenience than to prevent it. Be a move that lose the position of the pawns, defending the king and weakening the structure permanently. Playing h3 or g3 after castling creates an organic weakness that can never be remedied. As a pawn once advanced cannot retreat and the positions once altered cannot be restored. The pawn that has moved forward itself becomes a target for direct attack. White, the square, while the square is guided earlier, here it is g3 become a landing field for the enemy's troops. You should never, unless for necessity or to gain an advantage, move the pawn in front of the castle king, says Tarsh. For each pawn, more loosen the position. Alkaline explains it even more strongly. Always try to keep the three pawns in front of the your castle king on their original squares as long as possible. Black can now speculate on breaking up within Kingside by removing h3 pawn, even at the cost of the pieces. The recapture there opens g file and expose while king to attack this plan is of course not able to be put in action until more pieces are brought into the play. So, Black's ninth move, knight f6. The knight swings into the fray with an attack on the e-pawn. The move is excellent and confirmed with the useful general principles. Develop with a threat whenever possible. Remember that to meet the threat, the opponent must drop whatever else he is doing. 10th move for white, d into e5. White exchange and open up line for his pieces. Unfortunately, this reacts in the black's former in accordance with the rule in this case. Open lines are to the advantage of the player whose development is superior. Here, black's development is superior. The 10th move of a black is knight e5. Much stronger than taking with the pawn, the knight on e5 beautifully controlled radius power to envy directions, something a pawn can't do. The disappearance of a white's d pawn has benefited black's bishops hidden away at a7. In the range has been its range has been extended so that it now controls the whole of the long diagonal leading to white's f2 pawn, and the king is just behind the pawn. What shall white do now? He has done nothing to retrieve the plights of his e-pawn. It's still attacked by one of the black's knight, while his bishops threats by the others. 11th move white, knight e5. This looks possible as white goes right to powerfully place a piece, but in making this exchange, White's own f3 knight, the best defender of the castle position, also comes off the board. The importance of holding on to the knight in such a situation was pointed out by Stretching more than 70 years ago when he said, three unmoved pawns on Kingside in conjunction with the minor pieces form stronger bulk knock against an attack on this using Taras attacks to the valuable properties to the f3 knight with a simple emphatic statement. A king at f3, fc for black, is the best defense at the castle position, king side. Now black plays 11th move, plays queen e5. Observe that white's knight has disappeared completely from the board, but black's knight has been replaced by another piece. This new piece, the queen, is magnificently posted at e5. She dominates the center, bears down on the hopeless e pawn, and is poised for quick actions on any part of the board. How does the white solve the problem posted by the positions of the menacing queen and the attack on his e-pawn? He would leave to dislodge the queen by 12 f4, but unfortunately the move is illegal. Can he solve the pawn? White's 12th move is knight d2. Desperately hoping that black will snatch up the pawns by 12, knight e4, when there would be followed by knight e4, queen e4, or rook c1, and the pin wins the queen. But black is not interested in Grastoning Pound. His positional superiority is great enough to justify looking for the combination that will conclusively force a win. His bishop exerts terrific pressure on their respective diagonals. Even though one bishop is still underdeveloped, each of them attacks a pawn shielded to the king. Black queen is ready to swing over the king side, while the knight can leap in if more help is needed. Black controls the center of conditions that Well, is it essential for the successful attack against the king? In short, black is entitled for a winning combination as a reward for his methodical position play. The question is there a target available for the explosion of the point of power? Sure. Bishop h3 is 12th move of black. Yes, indeed. The h pawn, which inconsistently moved to h3 to prevent a pin. Black rumors the offending pawn fit punishment for the crime of weakening white's position and betraying his king. 13. White's play g into h3. White must capture the bishop or be a pawn down with nothing to show for it. 13th move of black. A crashing entrance. Notice how black has exploited the two main defects of GH3. He captured the H pawn itself and utilized the G3 square weakened by its advance as a point of invasion. 14th move of white, King H1. White may not take the queen as his f pawn is pinned. Black's response 14th, Queen h3. Black destroys another defending pawn, further exposing the king. The 15th move of white. White only moves in return for the sacrificed bishop. Black has two pawns and the attack. Black's move knight g4. 15th move of black, knight g4. Thereafter, threatening mate on the move, white must guard against the threat at h2 or give his king a fight square. If he tries to give his king room by 16 rook e1, he fails into 16 b into f2. Hence 16 knight f3 is white move. To give h2 and stop moved by the queen, how does black conclude the attack? And he reasons it out this way: I have captured two of the pawns near the king. If I can remove the third pawn, it will deprive the king of the last shred of protection and he will be helpless. This last defender of f1 is attacked by the king, by the knight and bishop, and protected by his rook and king. I must either drive off one of the defenders or attack the pawn. And third pawn, perhaps I can do both. The 16th move of black, queen g3. Again exploiting the circumstances that f pawn is pinned and black attacking it with third piece of the queen. Now white respond 17th move, king h1. The king must move to the corner and desert the pawn. Only the rook defends. He is now against an attack by queen. Knight and bishop. The pawn must fall and with it the game. 17th move upper black. Bishop f2. Bishop f2 covers the king fight. Square g1 and prevents him from returning there in answer to checkmate. So now 18th move of white is rook f2 runs into, and now the black's response, final response of the black is knight f2, and now with this knight f2 there was no escape. Here black wins and white loses this game. This is what I started with the king's attack, and here he I want to tell that the three pawns when you castle the king are very important. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Please subscribe to my channel, and if you like this video, please like and share. Thank you.